Welcome to No Romance Without Finance. Today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Dr. Foojan Zeine. She is a psychotherapist, podcast host, international speaker, and author. She has her doctorate in clinical psychology and is a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing online and in her office in Southern California. Dr. Zeine is the originator of awareness integration, educational and psychological theory, and intervention, and the author of 6 books, including Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want. She is the host of a Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan podcast. She is a lecturer at California State University, Long Beach, and is obtaining graduate certification in human behavior topics from Harvard University. Yes, that is what I'm talking about. She appeared on Dr. Phil's show and is a guest speaker at major universities, including MIT, UCLA, UCSB, and Harvard. She has recently launched Foojan app for everyone to have an opportunity to experience self-awareness and life fulfillment. Welcome, Dr. Foojan, to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's so nice to be with you. I love it, and I'm excited to have our conversation about
Me too.
romance.
That's right. That's right.
I love the name. I love the name.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And I really am excited to have you on because since you are a licensed psychotherapist, I really want to get into women's minds. And one of the things that I've noticed, and the reason that I'm doing this podcast, No Romance Without Finance, is because, women find themselves in very precarious situations, very dangerous situations when it comes to their relationships and finances. And I want to know, what is it about our psychological makeup? What is it about us where we find ourselves in these situations?
Of course. One of the concepts of looking at is as a male, as a boy is growing up, the message is always that your job is to get a job and create money. And if you're the day you're going to have family, it is your job to take care of your family and your children and your wife. And many people, when they say like to men, are you ready for marriage? They think financial. Well, I'm not settled yet. I cannot provide for my family yet. So the concept of providing for a family, it's kind of innate. It's part of the, the education or the messages that are consistently given. For women, we have 2 options. Obviously, history stated that women did not have the opportunity to work or create finances. The way that they got finances was from 2 ways. One was their family of origin had some finances, so they had some wealth, so they gave them, or it was a will which their parents passed away and they inherited some money. And the second one was marriage. You became a wife of someone, you became a mother, and that was your role. That's, and the man provided. Well, after a while, we also got to see that, no, I deserve this. I can work, I can earn, I can do all of these things. So now we have different paths. However, most women who choose to have children, there's still a time frame in their life which they want to have the choice that if they're not earning at that time, that they prefer to have the ability to really be with their children for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, some all the way until they raise their children and go off to college. And they want to have that safety and security of being taken care of in that way. So you can see that concept of being taken care of, it's a different dynamic that women get raised into, and the society and sometimes even looking at our genetics says that we want safety, not because we're less than or different in that sense, but we are different, that we have childbearing ages, years that we need to be taken care of because our focus is going to be raising our children. And so that's where you could see the difference about the mentality. Now, if you come from the Western world has passed through these concepts of women can work and even they can go have an amazing profession while, they're having their children and raising their children. If you come from a little bit more of Eastern society and more patriarchal systems, I think the concept of being taken care of is more attractive. Like even if the woman has their own businesses and they're earning money and they're even earning money than the person who they married, there's still this part which is, I will be attracted to you as a man or as a partner if you have the ability to take care of me and provide for me. And I've seen this a lot because I work with also a lot of powerful women who earn a lot of money, and now they're going out with people who are not making as much. And you could see the difference, the dynamic, which is, I'm not sure if I'm attracted to that or not. Although for men, they get very much attracted to a woman who wants to be provided for, and it's not necessarily that they need to be an equal earner in that space, right?
Right. And do you think that that is something that we've been inculcated to believe, or do you think it's genetic? Because if we think about genetically, yes, women give birth. And instinctively, we are to take care of the person that we gave birth to, correct? So because of that, and during that time, we need help. But I've read a lot of research on anthropological studies around women and how we behaved before all the inculcation of religion and society came into play. And from what I understand is that if we look at native tribes, right? And even today, that these tribes, there is no really female and male roles, like the male has to provide and the female doesn't. Like when she gives birth and during those first few months of taking care of the baby, for sure, but everyone pitches in. So it's not just her responsibility to take care of the child. And women worked right along the side of men. They, if you're good at hunting, if you're a woman, you go hunting with the men. If you're good at planting food, that's what you did. So it wasn't like these gender roles that we have. Where did this come from? When did we start believing these gender roles?
I think the part of the genetic factor is not a question of capabilities and abilities. The genetic factor, I think, came from, first of all, people died very early. So you pretty much had the time of being raised, having children, and then you would die.
Interesting.
So, it wasn't like now we have post raising of children,
right,
and then we have another 30, 40 years of women being powerful business people.
Right.
And see that. You could see like women are amazing right after giving birth, raising them to 7, 8 years of age. They go to school or even teenager, and then women have found this new power. Like,
yes,
now I'm ready to take on the world, and they are. Right. So when you're looking at the genetic factor, that a lot of times from that perspective of who do I get attracted to is genetically as an animal to animal, who do we have set up as get attracted to? Women get attracted to men who can provide safety and security for them. And safety and security, it really has to do most of the time for those years of childbearing.
I see.
However, we've changed, like you said. A lot has changed. We live until, we not only live, but we function highly. Look at Jane Fonda. Over 80 years of age. Like, look at all of these women who, from 80s and 90s, they're still in high level functioning. And after their childbearing years, right? Like, so let's say all the way to 40, you still got another 40 years.
Right. Where you don't need someone to provide and protect you, right?
Yes.
Right.
And because you've already earned the concept of, I know how to protect, I know how to raise, I'm confident now.
Right.
I've had to multitask 10 different things constantly. So I know I'm capable of doing all of that. And most of the time, the women through these years have had to manage money beautifully. Like they're the one, although they might not have been the earners, all of them, but they've learned how to manage.
Right. Right.
Right?
Exactly.
That's the skill. Managing the money has been the skill. So more and more when you see this shift, and you're very accurate about cultural perspective. Why do I say that? Well, I come originally from structural, family system, which is a little bit more patriarchal. Although the women in Iran used to be that they were landowners, and they got, they actually got their wealth from family systems, which came down to them, and they became wealthy. The women were also wealthy, and they, like you said, in some parts of Iran, they were working, side by side with the men as labor. They would put their kids on their back and they're
Right.
farming and doing all of that. And I've watched these women from different, people from Afghanistan, from Saudi Arabia, some of the Middle Eastern countries, which have a little bit more of a patriarchal system, as they've come in and in the United States or in European countries. And after a while, the cultural difference has brought them into a space of, I love to be a mother, but I also, this is not enough for me. I want more. I want to be able to earn. I want to know it's not just having the finances. I want to know that I'm somebody. And I want the world to know that I'm capable, and I want to know that I'm capable. So you can see the cultural messages that are different as women are getting raised, and men are getting raised in a different culture. Their system, their attraction, all of that changes. Now I hear from men that I really get attracted to women who have earning power, who know who they are, who are confident, who are capable, because I think that if their only path is motherhood, that I would love for them to be able to sit down with me, and we're talking about business. They have ideas, go back and forth and have experience out there. So you can see how, what you could say, the epigenetic, the cultural perspective, the environment has changed us in different cultures.
Sure. And I want to go back to this idea of motherhood psychologically. Do you think that motherhood is just being a mother? That's it. Stay-at-home mom. Do you think that that's enough for you to feel value and worth, or is it dependent on the individual? And I guess some people may feel that, but honestly, I have never known a stay-at-home mom that has been 100% fulfilled from staying at home.
I think it depends on the surrounding and the culture they live in. If all the women who are within that community, they value that of motherhood for 3 years up to 15 years or 18 years, then because your surrounding values it, then you will value yourself. But if you are in a community that is asking for more of you, then you're going to feel not enough. Because if the social media, if the people you're hanging out with, for example, I had a client which she had a child, and she was just amazing with this child for the first 2 to 3 years. And at one point, it's like, I need adult conversation. I can't do this gaga goo anymore, right? So, and then she started obviously, going into socialization with her friends, and many of the couples who they used to go out with, they were physicians, they were dentists, they were professionals, they were attorneys. And one of the things she said is, as I go into dinner, I have nothing to say. The only thing that I have to say is, what are the things that are happening with my children, which with other moms who, my kid is in the same school, we have some common conversation. But beside that, if I'm going beside with my husband and the other group or some of my other friends who did go through the professional route, when we sit together, I I feel less than, and I can't really put myself out there and create it and say anything that would make me like, okay, I also have something. So these are the shift of the community around us, which gives us either the value or says I'm valueless in this group.
So don't you think that regardless of which community you're in, you should have more to say than what's going on with your children?
Absolutely. I think that when we expand ourselves and not limit ourselves, that's where the best experience shows up. I was sharing a couple of days ago a woman who is around like 55. And she was saying to me that I feel so depressed because I was experiencing giving my children anything they wanted. I was just with them and whatever they wanted and anything that the psychological world told me I did for my children. However, now that my children are grown and gone, I go into communities and see that all these professionals are there. And now I go back and say, maybe I wasn't a good mother because at that time I wasn't even thinking about these things. And I wasn't utilizing supporting my children to expand because I wasn't expanding. So she went through this depression about why was I just holding the space of the three of them and doing whatever they wanted as a child, which is a appropriate perspective from a psychological way of how to be with your children. But just about what you said, there was a part of her that was missing a bigger picture. And because she was missing the bigger picture, she was not allowing herself to also expand the mind of her children. And, 20 years later, she's going back with all of these regrets. So there's a lot more also about time management of how does someone who chooses for a period of time to have children and pay enough attention to them, how could they also have the time management to do other tasks of growing themselves? And that's what we work with a lot, which is the minute that your kids are starting to go to kindergarten or daycare or those hours that are in between, what do you want to do? You can sit there and gossip with your sister, or you can utilize those time to do something which is making you grow and is, either earns a task or earns finances or earns degrees or certifications or something that creates that after these kids are going to be at school 8 hours to 10 hours, you've got all of that time to take care of yourself and grow.
Right. And my theory is that that women in societies where it's okay for them to stay at home and they have, female friends, they're also mothers, and, they only talk about their children and that's what they have in common. And they're feeling fulfilled in doing that because of the society. My thought is they're not really fulfilled. They just don't know any better. Because the second that you take that woman out of that society, and I've seen it happen just from coming from Iran or the Middle East to the US. You have a woman in Iran that's like, I'm perfectly content being at home with my children. I don't need anything else. I don't need to talk about anything else. I don't need to know about anything else. And the second they come to the United States and they see that there is potential for growth, then they are not feeling fulfilled, right? And my idea is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and this is a question for you, my idea is that they've always had the need to expand inside them. It's just that the oppression of the society and the norms of the society is not allowing that to flourish.
Absolutely. And I do think that and as a human being, we all need to flourish in order to have a certain identity that we say, it's useful not only for me, but also for people around me and the society. Every person wants to experience their own capability because they get confidence with their capability. And that's why
Right.
I usually even suggest that, in every part of the time where you see your children have the ability to do something, don't do it for them anymore. Let them do it, because knowing that I'm capable, knowing
Right.
that I have agency, knowing that I have choices is what makes you have self-esteem and self-confidence.
Right.
So if that's taken away from you, then obviously your confidence goes away. The motherhood itself, there's a beautiful, let's say, I call motherhood, and even someone being, choosing to be a domestic, as a career, chooses to be domestic wife as a career. That by itself should be earning, between 150,000 to
Yes.
$200,000, because the task that a woman does
Right.
as a domestic wife, as a mother, and as you raise too many children, you understand the tasks that are there are important, and creating the environment for the next citizens of the world are so important. So I don't want us to minimize that, because I think that's something that should
Sure.
be there for women to be able to have the choice. Other concept of it is, when I have the capacity to, so it means when my child is off of the infancy and toddlerhood, which it gives me a little bit more of a time where I can be there for them, so many hours of quality time with my children, but also other times which I can have quality time for myself, for my growth, to be able to utilize those times for growth.
Right.
Because there's going to be a time where either you choose to have those times as earning money, and whatever it is that you're doing that you feel confident and capable of, or that you will assign so many years and say, out of the 80 years of my life, I'm going to assign 5 years to 10 years of it. I still got 70 more years, right? And let's say, okay, the first 20, don't worry about it because you're growing up. So you got another 50 years that
Right.
you actually want to see your own capabilities grow. That's the part that when you have that mentality, then you're thinking about your expansions. You're thinking about it, especially because the marriage age has gone higher. So it's not like, they're marrying you off at 15 or 20.
Right.
People are getting married around age 35.
Right.
So if that's the case, you have all of these years from, 18 all the way to 35 that you can have your skill set, capabilities, earning money, learning how to do finances, management. And then even if you stop and you kind of shift your career into motherhood for a little while, then you still have time on the other side, another 30 to 40 years
Right.
of really experiencing your growth in all different angles.
Sure. And can you tell us what is the danger of women not expanding in relationships? What is the danger to them, for them to just be content with, okay, I raise my kids even though they're in school, I'm a housewife, I don't want to do anything more than this?
When you're dependent financially on another human being, you will always feel like a slave.
Why?
Because you have, and I hear this so much, Patty. They say, I hate it when I have to go and kind of like beg every week, can I have this money? I hate it when I have the credit card to use and they come back and look at the credit card like this and say, and what was this for? And what did you spend this for? And what did you do
Yes.
this for? And they tell me, like, it's so belittling for me to have to do this every single week.
Right.
And and there's also this other piece where they say the one who earns the money holds the power and the control. And the power and control comes that if your partner also knows that you have no earning capacity, they have the ability to just shun you and whatever your needs are, not necessarily to give it to you, because they think you have nowhere else to go.
Right.
We see this concept of abusing power in corporations with their employees. We see it everywhere. That if someone for a long time thinks that you have nowhere to go, they can abuse their power. And the way they're abusing their power is your needs are not important. Only their needs are important.
Right.
You
And
know?
are
So
there, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
earning power for women, it's like detrimental to them. They have to have the ability to earn money. Now, they could do it. Maybe they came from a family of wealth and they know how to manage properties and doing that. Maybe they learned something from being a domestic wife in their childhood and they turned that into a little business for themselves. Maybe it's becoming a professional expert in something and going into corporate world and doing it. It doesn't matter how. You've got to learn how to earn money and how to manage money.
Fantastic advice. And I want to know, are there red flags for women to spot a man prior to marriage who is going to be controlling like that? Because there's a lot of guys that will go into a relationship. No, you can spend all the money you want, and prior to marriage, they're like that, right? Oh, my money is your money is my money. You could do it all. You know, it's fine. And then the second that you marry them, things start to shift. They become narcissists, and things just start to shift to where they are starting to control you. What are some of the red flags that women can look out for?
Well, the element of control you can always see from the beginning. They will share, like within the first month, you could see, don't go here. I don't like that friend. I don't want you to talk to such and such with something. And you'll see the control. Now, that's different than, people sharing with each other where they meet and obviously two single people with two different ideas come together and they have to adapt. And you share with someone, this is works for me, and if you do this, it works for me, and this is my needs. And they give you the choice of having, I love you, so I'm going to do something for you. But there's a difference between if you don't do what I say to you, that I'm going to get angry at you, that I'm going to punish you, that I'll make sure that you're being punished. I'll take away rewards from you. It's as if like I'm the father, you're the child, I'm the
Right.
mother, you're the child, and I'm the control. So I'm going to make sure that every vote ultimately gets to me and then I get to veto it. So if you're seeing that kind of an attitude, it's not a safe relationship. But the essence of a relationship, Patty, is for people to be able to be equal. That's an essence of relationship. So if you see somebody kind of raising themselves up, there's danger there. And at one point, the one who's feeling under is going to start rebelling, and the one who's doing the like the parent
Right.
boss level is always going to have the last word. So you're going to feel not equal in a relationship, and that a marriage or a long-term relationship basis is equality. It's not. It's not like a up to down concept. So if you see someone, I don't care if it's a man or a woman, that does this up to down kind of a relationship with you, whether it's around finances or anything else, run.
Right, right, absolutely. So what do you think about some women, and I have friends who have married men and gotten a divorce, and they will say that prior to us getting married, there were no red flags. I didn't realize that this person was a narcissist. I didn't realize that this person was controlling. Do you think maybe they just didn't want to see it, or do you think people are really good at hiding it?
I think there's a difference, and I would say to you both.
Okay.
And sometimes it's not even that they're trying to hide it. It's just that when you become married, there's a different expectation. There are different things you actually face where you're not facing it before marriage.
Sure.
Another concept is that when people get married, they automatically also somehow become their parents, which in dating they don't. And that's a
Right.
little bit subconscious
Right.
because you learned dating from your peers. You learned marriage from your parents.
Interesting.
So the minute you sign the dotted line and your role changes from a girlfriend or boyfriend to a wife and a husband, suddenly you change. Like the minute the child comes in, you become a mother or a father. You become your father or your mother because that was your
Wow.
first role model. So it's like an
Right.
automatic thing, unless we're so aware of what we got from our ancestors and learning from our family systems, and what is it that I get to choose. And that's where the awareness integration theory shows up, is like really become aware of who are you? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are you behaving? What are the results you're creating? And out of that kind of an awareness, then you can kind of distinguish, ooh, I just became my mother, or I just became my father, but who do I intend to be? Like, what is it that I want to create? So yes, based on what you were saying, is it different? Is it different being in dating and a different being marriage? Yeah, but you also have to deal with different stuff. You actually now have to deal with and making decisions on finances together, because now legally it affects both of you.
Sure.
You have to deal with each other's family systems. You have to deal with like children's, in-laws, living in the same space, even controlling, negotiating temperature. It's a very different way of being together. And therefore, when people are getting married, now they're taking a stand for what they want, which is in a dating, I'll give you what you want. When you take a stand, when you go into a marriage is, I'll give you what you want, but I also have to really take a stand for what I want, because on a long term, I can't just give you.
Right.
What about me? I got to be in here. But when you say a narcissist, and I'm not talking from a clinical term right now. I think we're using it more as a, just the way people utilize it as someone who's self-centered. Like they first think of themselves, and they don't have the capacity of thinking of you and bringing you into the equation.
Correct.
Self-centeredness shows up at the beginning. So if you're not looking at it, sometimes they're just so like, high up and charming that maybe you're just getting, mesmerized by that charm, and you're not seeing that it's all about me. But all about me shows up also at the dating scene.
And in what way?
Well, they will tell you exactly what they want, how they want it, how you should be, how you should look. And if you, say something that they don't like, they get angry, they get, they can't handle your emotions, because it's all about them. Everything surrounds them. And you become part of their body system. It's like if you go somewhere with a narcissist, it's almost like they think, okay, you are my arm. You are the extension of me. Not that you are a person that I also have to take care of you.
Sure.
You become someone which is whether on my arm or after a while, you are my arm. So I don't even have to look at you. Like you just come along.
Right. Absolutely. And, it's interesting what you said about, people will show you, and not only show you, but people typically will tell you who they are. I remember I was dating a guy who on the first date, he told me that he was selfish. He told me, I'm really selfish. And in my mind, I was like, well, yeah, that's just because you're saying that, but you haven't met me. And once you get to know me a little bit better, that selfishness is going to go out the door. Once we're in love, you're not going to be selfish anymore. And further couldn't be from the truth. Like, oh my God, this dude, he was selfish. And he told me day one. And I chose not to believe that. Now, I've seen in my previous relationships, now looking back, I'm like, wow, this person was exhibiting controlling behavior, and they slowly try to control you, right? Slowly. In the first day, it's not all at once. It's first, I've shared this before, this guy I used to be engaged to, where he would say, first, I don't feel comfortable with you having dinner with men. Then it was, I don't feel comfortable with you having lunch with men. Then it was, I don't feel comfortable with you, on the phone with men. Then it was, I can't have you having any interaction with men whatsoever. So it's slowly, I started to see that, but that's not as obvious as the person who tells you right away, I am a selfish human being, and you're hey, you know what? No, this is not true.
Well, thank God they're more self-aware. But you're saying, I used to get someone when I was in like 18 years of age, and they were like, you need to stop moving your hips when you're walking.
Wow.
Yeah, it gets that bad. It really. Yeah. And you know what, Pattie? It's one thing is if we really listen. I mean, you said it beautifully. Like the dude is saying it himself. Mm-hmm. actually listen to the way the structure of the sentences are,
Yes.
you could see if someone is controlling. I want
Yes.
you. You should do this. This is the only way that is acceptable.
Right.
You could sense from the word structure. One of the things I do as a therapist, and people can like, how did you notice that? I'm like, I've been trained to listen. And the sentence structure that you choose
Wow.
to say tells me if you have respect for another human being's voice or thought process or their existence, or that person is an object for your satisfaction. And if that person is not a person, but it's an object for your satisfaction, then when you go into a long-term relationship, it's going to be hard. Now, if you're just having a one night sexual fantasy with another person,
Right.
that might work. But if it's a transition into a long-term marriage and you only see the other person as an object for your satisfaction, an object to come in and, give a birth to your children and raise your children, to come in and take care of you, then you could sense that that relationship is off balance up front. But I think that women get attracted to this power that the person presents and the charm. And for some reason, women think, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to go become the queen. And
Right.
the minute I become the queen, this king is just going to take care of me. Well, no, you're going to become a slave of that king because the kingdom can only have a specific way of handling the structure.
Right.
And there are women who love that and they don't see it as negative. And if their personality loves this perspective, they're going to enjoy it. So if there's a woman who their life mission is to marry, to take care of, that's their goal, that's their career. That's what happens, that I'm going to keep my husband happy and my children happy until I die. And then after my children, their spouses and my grandchildren. And when you sit with them when they're 80, 90 before they die, and they're like, I've done good because my husband was always happy with me. He was always caring for me. My children are happy with me. They're all happy. This was my goal for my life, and I created it. And if that's the path that someone takes and they can manage it and create it, beautiful. But even that path needs someone to have the ability to love you for who you are and
Right.
appreciate you for the gift of life that you're giving them.
Sure. And I want to close with this. Can you give us examples of sentence structures? Because when you said, you can hear it in someone's sentence structure, can you give a few examples of that?
One of the things to look at is how is one person, the sentence structure is a top to bottom. Like
Okay.
they elevate themselves and everybody else they're talking about is like downgraded a little bit, right?
Okay.
So you can see this. The other person, the other aspect is, are they giving you a choice that you as a human being is going to have a choice in response because they value that you have a brain. You do actually have to go through a process of saying yes or no, and that yes and no are appropriate on the table to be negotiated versus I'm going to say something. I already want the answer that I want. And if you don't give me the answer that I want, you will be punished. And the punishment could be that I fight, or it could be a cold shoulder, or it could be that I would avoid you, neglect you. But you will be punished because you didn't give me the answer that I wanted to get. So that's transactional. It's almost like you go buy a car and I know how much I want to buy a car. And if you don't give it to me, I'm like, bye-bye, I'm going to go to the next dealer.
Right. And so how would someone say it? I think that's what I'm curious about is that what is a sentence that someone says or the way that they structure their sentences that should be a red flag to someone?
As I said, if it feels disrespectful to you, if it's like, if you are, even when we're children right now, we're shifting the wording. But if it's someone constantly directing you, do this, do that. And this isn't just
Okay.
about men doing it to women. Women who start having children, they do the same thing now to their husband. And half of the time, the husband is like,
Sure.
why does she think she's my mother now because she's directing me in a particular way.
I see.
If you're in a relationship, you don't direct the other person. You request something, and you leave after you request. You actually listen and are curious about the person saying yes or no, and what are the reasons about yes and no. And then it's a point of negotiation and, valuing yourself and valuing them and meeting somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle between the two of you is usually where you guys will meet and consistently meet. And there are times that I will give something as a gift to my husband, although it's not good for me. But for a while, I think that this is so good for him. It's okay for me to give this as a gift.
Right.
But in a long-term relationship, this becomes reciprocal, because there are times that I want to do something which you just can't stand. I was like, I want to be with you, and I'm just going to come in and enjoy it, because those times I get to be with you. So this is honoring another human being.
Yep. Yes.
Right? So you can see those things within the sentence structure. I'm honoring you by being with you.
Sure.
So listen to the difference. Fine, I'll come because you're going to be bitching at me all day. Or, of course I'm going to come in because I love you, and although that scenario is not that, my favorite, but don't worry. I get to choose to be with you, and that's what's enjoyable. Now look at these two different sentences.
Right.
It isn't just because you're going to tell the world, say the words. It's because of who you are that says the words. So you got to think it. You got to feel it before the wording can even appear and come in.
Right. And that's really great advice, Dr. Foojan, because, I find myself in my head being the first in my head saying, fine, I'll come to the superhero movie, but I've done enough work where when it comes out of my mouth is, sure, I would love to go because I know that this is important to you, and I would love just to spend time with you. And I will go and watch this.
Pattie, somewhere between your thought and your sharing it, if you could also feel what you're going to be saying, then what you're going to be saying is going to be you. So your first one is, really? No. And then the shift happens inside. But I love him. I want him to enjoy this. So I'm just going to look at this as being there. So you first get it, feel it, and then as that comes up, then it's congruent. It's real.
Yes. And I do feel that, I do. And that's the only reason I can shift it, because I can feel it in my head of, you know what, he's so good to me in so many other ways. I'm just going to let him have it. And that's why it comes out like that. So Dr. Foojan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please tell the listeners where they can find you and what you have going on and the resources that you have?
Absolutely. They can go to my website, foojanzeine.com, FOJANZEINE.com. Everything is there. We have launched this app, Foojan. You can go Apple or Google, all of it, Android, it's there. You can go, even the website of that app is foojan.com. And they can go through the process for every area of their life, their finances, relationships everywhere around the world, even their own self. And every month they'll get 3 other relationships to work on, and they'll go through the app in, kind of like becoming present and aware, cleaning up the past, which is very important, and knowing, where these messages came up, and then envisioning tomorrow and seeing what it is and who do they intend to be versus the automatic self just showing up. They get to choose who they intend to be, and that app really supports them to do all of that.
What an amazing resource, Dr. Foojan. I am going to download the app. Thank you so much for your time. You've given us some great knowledge today. Really appreciate it. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you for joining us again. We love sharing all this information with you. And we are off. And never forget that a man is not a financial plan.